Hello everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, great. I've just bumped into someone I went to secondary school with, so there's no denying which generation I'm in today. So thank you for the introduction, Francis, and I also would like to say thanks for the opportunity in my line of work to be able to step out and actually consider the generation of students that we're working with and that are coming up. I really appreciate it, and Emer's presentation this morning was fantastic as well, to bring that research back. So just to give you a little bit of an introduction to Young Social Innovators, or YSI, it is a secondary schools programme and it is open to 12 to 15-year-olds. And I'll just actually, before I do that, I'll just give you an outline of the presentation for today. I'm going to introduce YSI, give you a context about YSI and the programs that we do, and then from our experience, some of this is backed up by other research, but this is generally from our experience, what are the 10 strengths of Generation Z that we have encountered? And then also we work with educators, so just some of the experiences of educators that may help in your own work. And finally, the importance of student voice. I think that's one message I'm going to get across today, is somehow incorporating student voice. And what we find is giving students a platform to speak out. They're willing to speak out when they're given a supportive environment and opportunity to do so. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Young Social Innovators, or YSI. If you have teenagers, some of them may have done YSI. Traditionally, it's a transition year programme. We started in 2001 with our senior action programme, and it's open to 15 to 18-year-olds. I think the two main things about it is that it is team-based. A team can be as small as 5 students, it can go up to a full class group of 30, and it's youth-led. So we really push the message across that young people themselves choose social issues that they care about, and then they do a change project around that. 2 years ago we introduced the Junior Action Programme. That's open to 12 to 15-year-olds, so it's done in junior cycle in schools. Well-being is being brought in. It's a huge subject area in junior cycle at the moment, and one of the things that we feel, there's indicators of well-being, connection to community. We see that's where we fit in, where young people can actually take an active role in their community, and they can work with organisations and other members of their community. So this is just a snapshot. We're currently we started in 2001. YSI's beginnings were with Sister Stan, if you know Sister Stanislaus Kennedy. Her and Rachel Collier, our CEO, started with a pilot programme of 4 schools, 100 students, and the idea was students choose something that they care about, they have a platform to speak out about their issues, they work with the community on a change project. So it started from 4 schools back in 2001. We had over 200 schools involved last year. We've had over 7,000 young people involved. And as I said, we introduced the junior programme 2 years ago as well. So this just, I've outlined the programs. Really, the main thing, the things that they have in common, I mentioned, the team-based and youth-led. And our purpose really is to engage students in social innovation. I'll give you YSI's definition of social innovation now. The difference is then, we see the junior as school-based. So students choose something that they care about and they do a school-based campaign around it. And then the senior action, we do have a national awards. In May of each year, about 30 to 35 of the kind of exemplary projects from around the country, I should say, are selected to go to an awards where they present their ideas to their peers and to an audience. In reality, some schools view it as a competition. That's the reality. We don't see it as that, but that's the case. You may hear people who've gone to the YSI competition. We don't call it a competition. So these are just some of our materials. The way in which we work primarily is through educators. So my role as an education officer, I do teacher training with secondary school teachers, but we're also open to youth groups and youth work coordinators, and then we provide resources online that they work through with the young people. But then we also work with young people at our events, which I'll explain a bit further. And YSI has, and I just realised, Francis, I forgot to say about social media. Feel free to take photos. I prefer if you wouldn't share any photos of our model or pictures of young people on social media, but please feel free, or if you want to tweet anything, that's fine. But feel free to take photos for your own purposes, that's fine. So this is the YSI model, and this was developed throughout the years, but these are the 4 main parts. This underpins everything that we do. I'll go through it briefly. The elements that we talk about the 4 C's. And this is care, cooperate, communicate, and change. So as part of the senior programme, for example, we ask the teams of young people to tell us about these 4 C's in a written report. So for example, if they've worked around the issue of homelessness, why? Why did they care about this issue in the first place? That would be an example of the care. Who did they cooperate with? How have they communicated their work and also the social issues? So that's the idea of the 4 C's. Yeah, it's important. They report back, and it's a nice frame on which they can actually talk about their ideas. The pathway then, I'll speak about, we use this, it's like a project pathway really, and there's 3 main parts, and it's the process in which they carry out their change project. And then experience. We see that, and we hope that YSI is a unique experience for young people and educators. So for example, we see an educator, and actually it probably is for all aspects of school life now, but for example, educators in YSI facilitate as opposed to instruct. If a teacher goes to YSI training and becomes certified, we call them guides. The idea is that they guide young people through their process. And then finally, values. I mean, everything that we do is underpinned by values of human rights, fairness, justice, inclusivity as well would be really important to us, inclusion. We feel YSI is open to, it doesn't matter what academic ability a student has, YSI should be accessible for them. So I mentioned the pathway. This is the YSI pathway that we use. It's not linear, so you can go between them. The first area is explore and create. So young people explore social issues. For example, one activity that we do at the beginning of the program is A to Z social issues. Literally, think of a social issue, we go through it. Some letters, I know them off by heart at this stage, but some letters are harder than others. But actually to explore, what is a social issue? What does that even mean? And then from that, they come up with a big idea, and we provide the tools for the educators to guide them through this. Test and adapt then, the idea of it's okay to fail, bringing in design thinking, and Ema, you mentioned about the kind of iterative steps, bring in something small, test it, maybe you have to adapt it slightly. We have activities around that, and we find this is really useful, because it is hard. It's hard to say, okay, that didn't work. It's hard for everyone, but actually it's probably where the most useful learning can be. And then finally, reflection, act and reflect. So do the activities, for example, it may be an awareness campaign, it may be a new product, but really important then, reflect throughout the process and reflect at the end. So we put a focus on individual reflection of the young person and then also team reflection and how they've worked together. I'm saying the young person, I mean education reflection is important in that as well. So that's our pathway, and it really underpins everything that we do. So I mentioned what is social innovation. Really it's around using creativity to develop a solution that impacts on the well-being of society. So creativity is the key, but that's what we say social innovation. When Rachel and Stan started out in 2001, they had to explain this all the time, but actually it's more, it's more innovation is everywhere, well-being is everywhere, so it's easier to speak the language now, but this is the definition, and it has been that since 2001. So just around Gen Z, what I was working with, and Emer mentioned about the phrase Gen Z. We don't use Gen Z in our everyday terms, but it's good to consider. Something that frightened me though was I was speaking to a newly qualified teacher last week who was 23. So it's not only the students that we're dealing with Gen Z, but some of the teachers teaching those students are actually coming to Gen Z, so are coming from Gen Z. So yeah, that was a sobering thought. I feel old doing this presentation.
You're amongst friends.
So I mentioned, I kind of was thinking about, I could have added more than 10 to this list, but what were the really key things that we've seen from our experience of young people doing our projects? And these are the 10, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide examples from what we've seen of these 10. So empathy, without doubt, I have no doubt that young people are empathetic, and we've seen numerous examples. Entrepreneurial spirit, millennials would have this as well, but we see it, and I'll give an example. Willing to connect, but maybe not connect in the traditional sense that we are aware of. We have conversations with teachers where they can't see how the young people communicate and connect in the way we would have, but maybe we have to adapt. They're passionate, without doubt, I see the passion come through. They see things that we don't see, and I'll come back to that. It's great to get another viewpoint. They're willing to speak out when given the opportunity. They do care about the future. They really genuinely do care. They care about the future of society and also their own futures. And Emer, you touched on that this morning. They're tech integrated, and I'm guilty of this. you know, making technology the thing, when actually it's just what they do. It's just what they do. But I'll give an example of a solution using technology. They are great mentors. I think when given the opportunity to mentor young people, they thrive. And then creative. To be honest, this is the one where I had numerous examples of Gen Z, that they really are creative. So it's again, I suppose, channeling how they can produce or they can create. One question I have around third level is the assessment process, and whether that, I don't know whether that has changed much, but that idea of producing something different if there's potential. I don't have the answer for that, but it's something that we've noticed works. So I'll just give a few specifics from these. Empathy was the first one that I mentioned. YSI, we decided to look at 4 pillars of learning to measure. We're just starting out on research, and these are the 4 that we're going to try and see when we see distance travelled from young people involved in our programmes. Empathy was number 1, connection to the community, because it is a core one of what we do. Self-esteem, young people's self-esteem, and then the empowerment to believe that they can make a difference. But I'll focus on empathy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you an example. I mentioned the reports are due from teens each March, and one of the questions that we ask is, what is the goal of your project? Simple. And I just did a kind of word cloud. I just took last year's answers from our senior students, so the 15 to 18-year-olds, and people was the number 1. So young people still want to be connected to people. They still, you know, that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed from generation to generation. And then other things, I'll mention about the social issues that they have chosen in the past few years, but definitely people are making a difference. They do want to make a difference. So what I'm going to, the next one then is entrepreneurial spirit, which, to be honest, the example I'm going to show is empathy and entrepreneurial spirit combined. It's a group of students, so they're from St. Joseph's in Lucan. They have developed books. I'll let them explain. I have a little video. But they have set up their own online store. You can buy the books. It's very small, but if you want to buy the books, I'm not affiliated with the selling. I make no profit. NoLimitsBooks.com. But what I'll do is I'll play the little video. They were featured on RTE News. So I'll play this video.
Wonder Wheels, Anna's Amazing Nora, a Rural Rescue.
So we write fairy tale books with the protagonist having a disability or special needs, and basically what we are trying to do is improve the underrepresentation of these people in children's literature.
So we wrote 3 books, Wonder Wheels, Anna's Amazing Nora and A Royal Rescue. So in Wonder Wheels, a boy named Sam is a superhero in a wheelchair, and he saves his school with his disability. And then in Anna's Amazing Nora, a mermaid with epilepsy uses her knowledge of how epilepsy works to rescue her friend Delphi the dolphin. And then in A Royal Rescue, 2 twins with Down syndrome rescue their favourite toy from a dragon.
So my dad, his name is Colin, and he has cerebral palsy. So basically he's in a wheelchair. And so for me, I guess like I've had it all the way from when I was a baby, like it's just normal to me. So I suppose I just see that he's like a dad. There's no difference to him and her dad just because he's in a wheelchair, do you know what I mean? My cousin, her name's Neve, she suffers from severe epilepsy, and basically I see all the time how she's just, you know, a regular cousin. She's no different to anybody else. Yeah, and I suppose people with disabilities, just to make them feel like, as Eva's cousin, like she's 17 and she still likes the idea that there's someone, like she's never had a book in her life that there's a person that has the same thing as her. So just, yeah, to make them feel included and to make them feel that they are the same.
After a few moments, Daffy turned to her friend. Oh, Anna, I was so scared. My hands and feet were prickling and my mouth tasted weird. The end.
I always feel like a slight fraud when I'm sharing the amazing work of the young people. I mean, they're fantastic, and in fact they're going to a global competition in Durban in South Africa in August. So if you see them in the press, that's who they are. Willing to connect. Then another aspect we find is that young people are willing to connect. One thing we hear though from teachers, for example, we would suggest in the Explore and Create stage of the programme to speak to experts. If you can't speak to people directly affected by an issue, to speak to experts. But often transition year students or fifth year students, they don't want to make the phone call to the organisation, or they don't want to email, but they just don't want to use traditional methods like we know. But this is an example of connection. I mentioned about that global competition. It's taking place in August, and I was speaking to the teacher of one of the teams, and financially money has to be raised, but the next day the team had set up a GoFundMe to figure out how they would do it, that they have reached people, they've raised funds, that young people will find other ways of connection. It's not the traditional way that we may know. Social media then, we find what happens with our programme is that teams will create a social media profile. Instagram is the #1 really, but what we find is that young people will communicate to us via social media. That, for example, we get a lot of messages through our Twitter or Facebook. So they are connecting, they connect out to other organisations. Often, for example, TDs, they may connect with TDs through Twitter or whatever. So they are reaching people in different ways. And then I just put this example up. This is Largy College in Clones in Monaghan. So they have used art and creativity, and mental health was the issue that they were looking at, but it's about reducing the stigma. But one of their videos, and I actually don't know the answer of how this is done, they reached 3 million views on YouTube. So they use creativity, they use amazingly produced videos, and they're reaching out to people. And I honestly don't know if you have insights, but they have reached 3 million people around the world, so they are connecting in a way that I don't even understand, to be honest. And then I mentioned passionate, yeah, all the examples I have. For YSI to work, and you saw in the example of the No Limits books, the girls chose something that they know about, they care about, they have a human connection to, they have a personal connection to. The most successful YSI projects is where a student or a few students have a reason to care about the social issue. Often we find it may be something that happened in a community, or it may be something an individual student has happened, or the connection. If you can find that space where students are connected to what they're working on, that's where something really magical can happen. And yeah, the passion comes through the passion comes through naturally. See things that we don't see. We had 2 years ago, we had a project report come in. It's a school based in Charleville. And what they said was, so the teachers were leaving their paper cups from their coffees around the school every day. So the students decided to do something about it. The teachers themselves probably, I don't know if they were aware, but it was that the students could see this, that the teachers couldn't. So they actually did a project called Ditch Your Carbon Cup Print. Through the Explore and Create stage and the Test and Adapt, they actually looked at designing a reusable cup, but they found, and these guys blow me away because I'm not very good with business, but I'll show you a picture. They actually went to Odessa in the Ukraine last year with their program. What they did is they realised that it wasn't worth producing the cup, but what they did is they worked with Charleville Chamber of Commerce, and they brought in a Ditch Your Carbon Cup Print week to Charleville, and they worked with the local businesses. They're now they're continuing on, they're in 5th year. I don't know the dreaded Leaving Cert. The Leaving Cert throws things, but they're working on a certification programme for businesses around reusable cups. I was lucky enough to accompany them to a meeting with Dennis Nocton where they presented their ideas in the Dáil. I just had to sit back because they are so savvy and so business minded, but that started, they put it in the report that started with seeing paper cups being thrown around the school. Okay, and also I think this is where YSI we would pride ourselves, that we provide platforms for young people to speak out. So one thing that we do each year for the senior students is in March of each year we have the Speak Out Tour. It's a regional event, we have 16 of them around the country. The teams that are doing their projects, they have 2 minutes to speak out on stage about their social issue. They are not allowed to use PowerPoint, and again, I'm probably contradicting here with my 44-slide presentation, but they have to think in a creative way how to present. So I'll just give you a flavour of the Speak Out tours. And I think I've gone through this. Basically, the idea is invited people, so there will be 30 schools, say, and then invited anyone who's interested may come along. Young people are trying to influence them. It's a great opportunity for the teams to hear what other teams are doing, so there will be a range of different issues. And then they listen to what each other's saying. And this is just some stats then. So we had, 329, that must be over, that's overtime, it wasn't last year, 16 events. But yes, as I said, we travelled all over the country and we probably got to meet about 4,800 young people. This is what we have a panel, it's almost like an X Factor setup, so we have a panel of people who are listening out for these three things. We ask, and we mentioned about the 4 C's, we ask that the teams communicate why they feel a need for change, what is their social issue, they have to explain that to us, why they feel a need for change, and what innovative actions they've taken or plan to take. And this just gives a little flavour of a Speak Out.
This is it, the stage is set. So why is my Speak Out tour? Time to get started.
So that's just, that kind of gives an overview of the Speak Out tour, but they are actually speaking out about serious issues, but the way in which they do it, they can do it in lots of creative ways. We do encourage a full team to be involved, and that mightn't necessarily mean speak, but we really, where possible, everyone should get up on stage, and I suppose it is that team building, that preparation. They can be challenging to prepare, I'm sure of that here and back at the schools, but that idea of performance, articulating your idea, putting it out there, it's scary, but actually there's validation in getting that across. And they are amazingly fun events as well, it's really feel good. They are willing to speak out, and they're also willing to speak out about controversial or taboo issues. Sometimes we actually get calls from teachers wondering, You know, for example, the team that won the Gold Award this year, their project was about sexting. So it's quite a mature subject to be speaking out to peers about. But they did it in such a great way that it was well researched, and they actually connected with, for example, Community Gardaí to come in. So they are willing, if given the support and the safe environment. Now I realise we are working with 15 to 18-year-olds, so it's slightly different in your context, but they are willing to speak out and learn more about those kind of controversial issues. And we see that each year actually. What we advise to our teachers is that they do get the backing of the school support, so principals and board of management if necessary around particular issues. They are tech integrated, as Emer said earlier today. They've been born, all they know is social media, and they've been born into it. So what we look at, and we do have a category around social, mobile for good, I should say. This is just an example from this year. It was the Isatabo project at St. Fintan's High School in Sutton in Dublin. They were working in Zambia, so they had volunteers going to Zambia. So what the boys did is they created an app which was, it translated phrases into the Bembra language for people travelling. This may exist already. It didn't matter so much. It was the fact that they were actually thinking of how they could work towards this finished product. I am by no means an expert in app development or anything like that, but what we do find is that it is a response. Technology is a response to the challenges that are put through. So technology comes through as one of the solutions that teams come up with. Another thing around technology, we noticed this year as a social issue coming through more and more is equality to access to students. So we had the STEM subjects. We had one school and they actually did a subject swap. I mean, my first reaction is girls' access to STEM, but actually also it was boys' access to subjects, for example, to home economics. So we had a school that actually did a swap of subjects, but it was a social issue that I had noticed in previous years, but this year definitely accessibility to subjects. The reason I'm saying that is that maybe some of your students have worked long and hard to do the subjects to get to the point that you meet them, but it's definitely something that came through. I mentioned mentors. Definitely, we find in some of the projects that students either create an educational resource for primary schools, for example, or they actually go out and they work with primary schools, that they will do a workshop, and they really get a lot from it. We're also finding now with our alumni that we're trying to find opportunities for them to mentor young people in the YSI programs. This is just a short video. Now the quality of the audio is okay. Colin McAndrew, he's in college in Maynooth, he's first year of college now. He was involved a few years ago but has mentored students. He'll explain, it's just a short video. So you can explain.
Well, my YSI experience started in 2015 when I co-founded a mapping project with my friends, and we aimed to map the country of Lesotho. Then in 2016 we won the All-Ireland Young Social Innovators, and that was fantastic. I'm in first year of college now in Maynooth, so when it comes to the YSI experience, it's about teaching you skills and teaching you how to go and achieve your dreams. Not only that, but to help others achieve theirs.
Brilliant. And there's a lot of students here online today. Can you tell me a bit about what they're doing and what you're here?
Yeah, well, they have two fantastic projects. The one they're presenting today is Bicycle of Life. So it extends on from a project we were working last year on soil erosion, because much of the world's soil is being washed away on a daily basis, and that's terrible for food security. So they have a fantastic innovative product that recycles old bikes, and they'll tell you all about it, but it's going to make a huge difference to soil erosion.
Brilliant. And the mapathon that's going on today, can you tell me about that?
Well, I'm just so proud to see the mapathon grow to a point in which it's a stand here today in the Young Social Innovators. It's something I'm really proud to see, and I'm really proud of the team that's doing it.
And what is a mapathon?
So a mapathon is a mapping party. So we use OpenStreetMap to map the unmapped areas of the world, and believe it or not, there's so much of the world that is unmapped. But a mapathon is like a marathon. You just keep mapping and mapping and mapping for a certain length of time and get as much done as you can.
Yeah, so that's it now. Colin, he has come back. We started a program this year as a pilot. It's called the Elevate program, and it's for the Senior Action Programme Beyond. So Colin came back as a mentor, but what we find is for both cases, mentorship between slightly older students and younger students can really work. And then I also mentioned about the students, secondary schools going out to primary schools. So any opportunity where mentoring can take place is very useful. Creative. So young people are creative. This is the one where I could find the most examples. Creative in what they do, and then also creative in their thinking. Producing, I'll take the creative in the sense of producing stuff. Every year we get books, we get board games, we get things produced, that they are well able to create things. I've left an example up there, you're free to look after the presentation. It's a board game. The social issue that was dealt with is direct provision. So they created an amazing book with artwork from students and a board game. The reason I chose this example, it's a school based down in Limerick. I actually had a youth worker at one of our events, one of those speak out events, and she saw this example. She actually works with students from direct provision, or indirect provision, so she actually managed to link the students together, use the board game as a starting point. So it just showed me that something produced, a tangible thing, that was the access point for both groups to work together. Yeah, they can create things that I would think are difficult, but it's easy. And then videos, another aspect is each year, we don't specify what is done in the sense of what is produced, but each year teams produce videos to raise awareness of their social issue. And this is an example of creativity. I mentioned about STEM earlier, but I suppose STEAM, the arts, is also really important, using arts for advocacy. I'll let this speak for itself, this video.
Sometimes, you know, what else can we do when we're feeling low? So take a deep breath and let it go. You shouldn't be drowning on your own. And if you feel you're sinking, I will jump right over into the cold, cold water for you. And all
I'm going to stop it there if I'm just aware of the time. The there's the creativity in the designing, the choreographing, but also in the production of that video, and an art factor.